The wind across the Himalayas has never been gentle. It is not merely an icy force that cuts through the skin, but something more ancient, like the whisper of the earth itself, where the tallest mountains on the planet have stood for millions of years, watching humanity come and go like grains of dust. The people of Nepal call the Himalayas the home of snow. But to many climbers, this place is also the boundary between life and death. Among the countless stories told about the Himalayas, one still sends chills down people's spines whenever it is mentioned. The 43-day survival journey of James Scott, a man who became trapped in the endless sea of snow within these mountains. Everything began in late autumn, the most dangerous season in the Himalayas. On slopes higher than 7,000 meters, the weather can change within minutes. A deep blue morning sky can turn into a blinding white snowstorm before sunset. At the time, James Scott was a British mountaineer in his 30s. He was not as famous as the Everest legends, nor was he a professional athlete. What made James different was his obsession with remote places that very few people dared to enter. Before the expedition, he told a friend, "In the Himalayas, people finally understand how small they really are." At first, the climb went smoothly. James's team pushed deeper into the remote region near Annapurna, one of the deadliest areas in the Himalayas, once known for having one of the highest fatality rates in the world. During the first few days, the landscape looked almost unreal. The sky stretched endlessly in deep blue. Snow-covered peaks reflected sunlight like diamonds. At night, the Milky Way appeared so vividly that it felt close enough to touch. But the Himalayas always have another side. On the 6th day of the journey, a sudden snowstorm swept through the valley. The wind was so powerful that the tents shook as if they were about to be torn apart. Temperatures plunged far below freezing. While searching for shelter, James became separated from the group. That was the moment the survival battle began. For hours, he wandered through a wall of white snow, barely able to see more than a few meters ahead. No footprints remained. No radio signal survived. Only the wind. The wind screamed as if the mountain itself were alive. James managed to set up a temporary camp beneath a rocky ledge, but food quickly began to run out. Snow buried every possible route. With each passing day, he drifted deeper into the wilderness. At that altitude, the human body begins to betray itself. Every breath becomes painful. The mind spins from lack of oxygen. At night, the cold becomes so brutal that sleep itself turns dangerous, forcing him to keep moving just to avoid freezing to death. James later said that he began hearing strange sounds within the storm. Sometimes it sounded like footsteps behind him. Sometimes like someone calling his name from inside the white fog. Many climbers call this phenomenon the third man, a hallucination that often appears when humans remain isolated too long in extreme conditions. But the most terrifying thing about the Himalayas is not the cold. It is the silence. A silence so immense that it forces a person to realize how completely alone they are in the vastness of nature. Day 17. James had almost no food left. He melted snow for water and searched desperately for patches of moss growing on rocks. His gloves were torn apart. His fingertips had gone numb from frostbite. Many times, he believed he would die there. No one knew where he was. No one could hear his cries for help. In his journal years later, James wrote, "There were moments when I looked up at the white mountains and understood that the Himalayas do not care who you are. They do not hate you. But they do not pity you either. Yet it is often in desperation that humans reveal their strongest survival instincts." James kept walking. One slow step after another through deep snow. One painful breath after another inside his burning lungs. He used the sunlight to guide himself, carefully following mountain ridges in the hope of finding any sign of human life. Day 30. James had lost a terrifying amount of weight. His beard was covered in ice. His lips were cracked open from cold and dehydration. Then one morning, as sunlight rose behind the mountains, he saw something that seemed impossible. Smoke. A thin trail of smoke rising in the distance. Using nearly the last of his strength, James forced himself toward it. After hours of dragging himself through the snow, he finally discovered a small hut belonging to local yak herders. The mountain villagers brought him inside, gave him hot tea, and warmed him beside the fire. By then, James had survived 43 days trapped within the Himalayas. A span of time many believed no human could endure. James Scott's story quickly spread through the climbing world. Not only because of his astonishing survival, but because it revealed the true nature of the Himalayas. This is not merely a place of towering mountains. It is a land that tests the final limits of human endurance. In the Himalayas, modern technology becomes insignificant. GPS signals can disappear. Helicopters cannot fly through blizzards. Even the most perfect plans can collapse beneath a single freezing wind. And perhaps that is exactly what makes this place so captivating. Human beings have always been drawn toward places beyond their control. Today, thousands of people still travel to the Himalayas every year. Some dream of conquering Everest. Others seek enlightenment in monasteries hidden high in the mountains. Some simply want to witness the roof of the world with their own eyes. But anyone who has ever stepped into this place understands one truth. The Himalayas are not a place for humans to conquer. Sometimes, surviving and returning home is already a gift. And somewhere between the endless freezing winds and the towering snow-covered peaks touching the sky, the story of James Scott continues to be told, a reminder that nature will always be far greater than humanity. Because in the Himalayas, one small mistake is enough for you to vanish forever into the endless sea of snow. If you enjoy mysterious and awe-inspiring stories from around the world, don't forget to subscribe and join the journey for more incredible adventures ahead.